Hey my lovelies, it's your girl Mel. Welcome back to my channel. We are here with mommy, so I already know say it's another story time with mommy. Story time with mommy. So mommy is finally back in Jamaica. The last two story times was recorded while she was in the States. But mommy they both again. She's
Yeah,
back to being a Jamaican citizen, okay? So yeah, mommy's going to take over as usual. So
okay. Hi Mel's lovelies, nice to be back in Jamaica again, and now we are ready for you again too, even on lives. So I ended last time's story with my ordeal in Switzerland when they put me out in the on the railway station because they arrested my boyfriend at the time. And now we are back in Germany, and trust me, the very first thing I did when I turned 18 was to make my driver's license. You know, my grandma did actually sponsor it more or less because she always had a little bit more money, and she when I turned 18 she gave me money and said, here, you can do your driver's license. At that time in Germany you only had to take like 6 or 7 lessons and your theory and stuff. So not like nowadays, you know, if you want to make a driver's license in Germany nowadays, you take about 20 lessons. You have to go to school for theory. You have to do a lot of things. You have to make a night drive. You have to make a highway drive. And I mean, it's like they really augmented it a lot. So not like what I heard in America, you can just go to the place and do your theory and then you drive a little bit and you pass. Not in Germany. Anyhow, so I turned 18 then, like I just said, and what happened, it was time for me to move out of my mother's house and move in with Thierry, because at that point in time we had been together almost 2 years already. So it turned out like we were a firm couple and we were still in love, and we kind of figured out a future together. And so we were searching our first apartment. At the same time I was going to school and working at a then completely in restaurant in Bielefeld. It was a Café October, where all the young people would meet and everybody would come there, and I was a waitress. Thierry was behind the bar. And so you can imagine that place was open every day until 1 o'clock in the morning. And then of course when you finish work you're not really feeling so tired yet, and you don't go straight home. So sometimes we would even go out after. There were 2 places in Bielefeld that were allowed to be open after 1. Only 2 in the entire town. And so we would end up in one of them sometime, not every day. And I wasn't working every day neither. I think it was about 3-4 times a week. And then I had to get up early in the morning again and go to school. By 8 o'clock I had to reach school, you know. So you can imagine I was not really sleeping that much.
well, that was your choice.
So we we looked around and got an apartment not too far actually from the Café October, not too far from where I was living now with my mom. Anyhow, it was a smaller apartment, and it was in a very, how to say it, very in a normal apartment building. There were about 6 apartments in that building, and we got one. And it's like we moved in, and now working in that cafe, we would Café October, we would always meet people, of course, right? And now Thierry and me, seeing that we both spoke French, as soon as any French people came in, they would kind of itch onto us, and we would kind of be glad, he especially, oh, I can speak French again, you know. And like, you know, so when you're in foreign and you meet your own language people, you're always more inclined to get closer to them quick. So we met quite a few people, and some of them came from Paris, some of them came from Algeria, because Algerians speak French as well. And so we having an apartment, we would invite them over sometimes and cook together and eat together. And once in a while, if some friends came and didn't have a place to sleep, we gave them shelter. They're like on some mattress or on a couch. So that apartment was always well frequented. You know, we always had a lot of people over, which the landlord didn't really like that. You know. And then one day, one of our friends that came from Paris, his father is from Guadeloupe, and his mother was French, or is French. And so he was a little bit darker skinned. And he was sitting on our windowsill to the road and playing guitar. I mean, not loud or nothing offensive or nothing, but just like me, and sing a bit, and nothing loud at all, but that was it. You know? Our landlord saw that and heard that, and he said, oh, I can't take it no more. So he gave us notice. Because I was like, a black man sitting on my windowsill and playing guitar. So we got notice.
But do you think the skin color was...
He literally said so to us.
Okay.
He said, it's, a black man sitting on my windowsill and playing. He literally said that to us, you know? And I mean, it was not even a complete racistic remark. It's not because he was black, but it was too unusual. It was not the color itself, it was too unusual and wild for him, you know? So it was not like, oh, I can't stand no black people. No, not at all. But it was simply, hey, this is a decent house, you know, and we can't take this kind of runnings. And I mean, I have to admit, we didn't fit in the house at all, because with our lifestyle, being young and making part in the hippie lifestyle, exactly, having all these people coming over, so we didn't really fit. And I mean, so we had to look for another place and found another place not too far away again, in a little house, in a little road with a little garden behind it. And we moved in there, and in the neighboring house there were some people living in community together, like 4 people, and we became friends as well. And then we started to having the little garden, and then we started to plant some ganja, which at that time, mind you, was completely illegal. It was not illegal, because at that time ganja was not forbidden. We are talking in the early 70s, right? So at that point in time, nothing was forbidden in that way. Actually, you had a right to green. It was a law, and only
right to green.
Right to green, and it's like they changed that law not too long after, though. I mean, maybe 2 or 3 years after that law was changed, because people started to plant ganja. We had a lot of hemp fields around Bielefeld. I mean, huge hemp fields, and hemp look exactly like ganja. It is basically the same plant, only without the THC. So people started to plant ganja within the hemp fields. You know, it was completely hidden there, and they knew where they planted it, and they would come in time and reap it. But that hemp was used like to make ropes, like for more it was industrial use, or for animal feeding and stuff like that. So that was, and we had big fields. After the law passed, actually they stopped even the hemp planting as well. Yeah.
Okay.
So for many years I haven't seen any hemp fields again in Germany, but I think they start back now. Anyhow, so we had our little hemp plants in the garden, and they were doing nicely, and then a neighbor came when we were just starting. You know, the leaves you can see right away, and then our neighbor came and saw the plant. It was right by the fence, and said, oh, that is a pretty plant. Can I get some too for my garden? We said, of course. You know? But we told him, look, if you know, it's only a 1-year plant, so by the time it started to get ready, we wouldn't mind if we could cut it and get it back, you know. And he said, yeah, no problem, I just want the plant. You know, so we had a neighbor growing ganja for us, so that was nice. Not knowing what he was doing the whole time. And we did get back the plants, and I mean, I'm not a smoker at all, so it was not for me. I love the plant, I think it is beautiful, but it was, so the whole produce was definitely not for me, but we gave it out to friends, and Thierry used to smoke a bit and stuff. I am, like I said, I cannot smoke. It makes me cough. I never smoked in my life. So I tried, of course. I tried a cigarette once and it was so disgusting to me that I never tried again. But so that was just like, that production was definitely not for me. It was just for friends and Thierry, basically. But I found it very funny knowing that our neighbor would kind of grow our ganja with us, whatever. So we spent about 1.5 years in that apartment, became good friends with our neighbors, not the one with the ganja, the others, the people who live in community. I had a lot of friends, the same thing, going in and out the house, and we would have a lot of parties. Being young and lively, we had a lot of parties. I remember one time with one of the girls from the neighboring house, we decided at, I think it was 11 o'clock at night. I had a little quarrel with Thierry. I was mad with him, right? And we were both in Cafe October sitting there and drinking, so I wasn't at work at that time. And I was like frustrated and miserable, and suddenly we looked at each other, the girl and me, and we said, you know what? Why don't we hitchhike to Holland and pick a tulip, drink a coffee, and come back? 11 o'clock at night, you know. So all I did, I went home, got a bigger jacket because it was pretty cool at night still, and at that time I had my little dog, Chico, that came into my life a few years before when I still was living with my mom, and my mom adamantly refused animals my whole life. I always wanted a little dog, and one day I carried him home, or her, and she was in a little basket. Half of it was Chico and the other half was 2 tins of dog food. And I put that basket right in front of my mommy and said, "Mommy, look here." And she looked at it. Oh, that is so cute. And she loved that dog from the very, very first minute, spoiled him to death. So I could keep her, but of course when I moved out I took her with me. So I had Chico with me, and I had this big jacket. Chico was as a grown dog. She only weighed 8 pounds, was small like this. And I put her in my jacket, and I had a bag with me, and the same, Yami, the next girl, she had a bigger jacket on. We didn't take anything else, and we stood, the highway wasn't far from, hard to reach from our place, so we stood by the highway, and this. At that point in time you could hitchhike easily, you know, it was not dangerous really like it became later on. It was a normal way of traveling actually for many young people. That is, we are still talking early 70s, okay? And at that time, even me, I would pick up people all the time. When I was driving around and I saw somebody standing, and it was almost, you had almost to do it, you know, to honor the hitchhikers. So we stood up at the highway and found transport right away. And I mean, Holland is about, what would I say, 200 miles from Bielefeld, you know. It's not like you just jump over the border there. No, and at that time we still had borders as well. The EU wasn't founded as yet. So in Europe, between each country you had borders where you had to stop and show your passport, and they had to pass you. So about, by what was it, about 6:30 in the morning, we reached the Dutch border, which somebody set us out right by the highway, and we walked down to the border. It wasn't far, it wasn't walking distance. And so 6:30, 2 young girls, one with a dog in her pocket, passed the Dutch border, or not even passed, stopped at the Dutch border. And the customs officer looked at us and said, what are you doing? I mean, this early and you're walking, and what is this? And we looked at him and said, really very fair, we are coming here to pick a tulip and drink a coffee. And he looked at us, yeah, right, you know. And then, well, he had to let us pass because we didn't do anything illegal or anything bad. So we walked over the border, in the very next village right behind the border, or it was right there. But it was too early still to drink a coffee because nothing was open yet. So we looked around for a tulip and found one too, because it was springtime, and there were a lot of tulips around in the gardens. And we walked a little bit around in the village until we found a cafe that was opening, I think it was 8 o'clock in the morning. So we sat down, had our coffee, got back up, walked back over the border. The same customs officer was still there, looked at us, and we said, see the tulip? And we just had our coffee. And we walked back over to the highway entrance and stood there and hitchhiked again. Now, one car picked us up and there were 2 guys in the front, and these guys now, they started to hit on us while we were driving, and it became a little bit uncomfortable. So we told them, no, there's nothing here. I mean, just bring us to how far you can carry us, and that's it. So they got kind of a little bit upset, stopped right at the highway there, in the middle of the highway, and threw us out of the car basically. So we walked on the side of the highway. Now that is extremely dangerous and is not allowed at all. There were no pedestrians allowed, of course. But we didn't have any choice. There was no way that we could come off that place at that point in time. And of course, a minute later, a police car stopped right beside us. And they look at us and say, what are you doing? So we told them what had happened. And they said, okay, come in. We bring you to the next exit. And that's what they did. And on the drive, they said, oh, you can't do that, and then stop on the highway. They said, yeah, but it wasn't really our choice, you know. And then he said, yeah, because if one car catch you, I mean, you will be 10 meters long. Because, I mean, with the speed, you know, in Germany, there is no speed limit. There are cars that drive like 150 miles an hour easy, you know, and more. Even more. I mean, they go pew, pew, right beside you, you know. And of course, if one car like that catch you, you are really gone. Anyhow, they let us out at the exit. Now seeing, then we stood up by that exit. It was Sunday morning. So on a Sunday, a lot of families were driving, and that is a bad timing for hitchhikers because basically it wouldn't take
cars
you.
Are full.
Right, cars are full, or they wouldn't take you anyhow. So we decided then, it was another little town where we stopped, and there was a railway station. So we decided, okay, we are going to take a train back home. That's what we did. We caught a train, and I think by 3 o'clock in the afternoon we landed back in Bielefeld. Having our tulip and had our coffee. Dead tired, because we were of course traveling through the entire night. We had been awake from before, so we were dead tired. Once I reached home, Thierry looked at me and said, where have you been? Because of course we didn't tell nobody, we just left off. And I told him the story, and he was like, okay. And then, well, I mean, it's like, yeah, because I mad at you because we quarreled and well, we made up right away, of course, and I got my nice sleep after to relax again. It was Sunday, as I was saying. I didn't have to go to school or nothing. And then by next morning, everything was back to normal. But that's the little crazy actions that we used to have sometimes, do sometimes, you know. Because at the time, what was it? I was like maybe 18. Yeah, I was 18, 19, not older than 19.
Now, what was so special about tulip? And
you only Holland is a country where they grow tulips professionally for the entire world. Oh. They export them basically. I mean, in Holland you have huge fields.
Holland for them,
nothing but
Holland for them, by the way, is Netherlands.
Oh, Netherlands. Sorry, yeah. So Netherlands, yeah. So in the Netherlands, in spring, you have huge tulip fields. And it looks so pretty when you see them, you know, it's different colors, and I mean, it's wonderful. And they actually grow them for export. So, like around now we have Easter time here. around Easter, the whole Europe would be plastered with tulips because everybody loved those flowers, like as a first spring voter. Was this voter? Like a messenger for spring, you know, because you see, remember in Germany and in the northern countries we have a long winter, no flowers, all trees are naked, no leaves on the trees, nothing. And so those tulips with the colorful blooms and stuff were our first inkling of spring coming. So everybody used to buy tulip them time of year, you know. So that's why we got the idea. Let's go and get a tulip in the country where they basically originate from. So after another, I don't even know how long we lived in the Karlstraße, but then we had met some friends, and they did live in an old castle at the time, with other people together, but they didn't get along so much with the people. So what happened, they were looking for another place to live and found an old farmhouse. And the farmhouse was a little bit outside of Bielefeld. I mean, you needed a car to reach there. And it was pretty much run down. I mean, we had to renovate a lot there because we decided to move in together. They were a couple with a little boy, and then Thierry and me. We had our separate entities in the house, and we would, we had a kitchen together, but we would just renovate, like paint up and set up, and there were stables on the side, and they did have dogs. We had our little dog. I had a cat by that time called Napoleon, and we called him shortly Nappy. So we and the animals moved into that house and had a lot to do with renovating and stuff. So we were well busy with our going to work, me going to school, renovating the house, and then just basic life. So I mean, our days were full. And then the other couple had two Labrador dogs, no, three Labrador dogs, one male and two female. One female was Bella, the other was Donna. And then what was the male name again? I don't even remember. And what happened, the male suddenly started to get mad at night. He scratched up. We would lock them up in one stable at night, and then he would scratch up the door, and we were saying, this is not normal. I mean, what is going on? It was like he was in pain or something. So in my house where my mother lived, downstairs we had a vet. So I said, come, let me carry the dog to the vet, because I mean the vet knew me well, of course, because I grew up in the house practically on the side with him, and he always used to treat my hamsters that I had. The only animal I was allowed from my mother were a hamster. So I went there with the dog, and we kind of knew already that probably something was really wrong. So the owner of the dog, Mike, he was really sad. So I went to the vet, and he examined him and said, no, this dog has cancer, and he has stomach cancer, and he is in pain. And he said, well, we might be able to operate him, but I wouldn't advise it. So I would advise to put him to sleep. And that was really rough, because I was there, and I held him, and I held him in my arms, and he knew basically what was going on, because his last look at me was really like, okay, I'm going, you know. And I almost start to cry now. It was really bad, and so he got his injection and went, and when I went home now and had to tell Mike that his dog was gone, he cried. You know, it was a very nice dog, full-bred Labrador. So basically, though, he and one of the two, well, both females had gotten pregnant. They were not father, or they were not related, you know. So the two dogs had gotten pregnant, and so I took one of their puppies, which that puppy was special because his top coat was brown, and underneath, when you lift up it a bit, it was black. So it was a very interesting color. So we got this one and we called him Tycho. So I had Chico and Tycho now. And living in that farmhouse, as I said, but then, so what happened one day too is like, everybody but me used to, as I told you, used to smoke hashish or ganja. And they would bake cookies too with it and stuff. So one day the other girl in the house, she decided to bake some cookies, which she did, and I didn't touch them. And what she did, she put them in a tin and put them up in the kitchen, up on the cupboard, way back, because practically hiding them, right? But she never anticipated her son. Her son was, at the time, he was like about 9 years old. And of course very nosy, and he realized that, ooh, there's something hidden up there. So he climbed up, got down that cookie tin and ate some of those cookies. That boy got so stoned. And at first we didn't realize what was going on, because what he did, he took it down, ate them and put them back up. So at first we didn't realize, we only saw that he was behaving funny, and then it was like, what is this? What? I mean, we got concerned. We were going to the pediatrician with him, you know, because it was like, what is going on here? So basically, finally we figured out, because the mother suddenly said, oh, let me look in the box, because she knew how much cookies were in there, and she looked in it. Oh, he ate 2 of those. No wonder that he's going on like that. So basically, at first he was funny, and then he went to sleep, and that boy slept for 24 hours straight. I mean, but at least we weren't concerned anymore, because we knew, okay, he will sleep it off, and then that's it. But it was kind of of a hard situation for everybody, and but it worked out fine. I mean, nothing did him afterwards. He was back to normal. And I think he never touched those cookies again, at least not until he was an adult. So that was solved. So our life there was kind of interesting, but eventually we did not really get along so fine with them. I mean, some quarrels started, some disagreements between us, and what happened throughout that time, I always used to have tonsillitis from I was a small child. I mean, tonsillitis, every year at least 2 times, heavy duty, I mean, really with fever and everything. And I always got those antibiotics, and I mean, we are talking still about like 15-20 years, or even shorter when I was a child, after the war. And at that time antibiotics only came out too, and they were really, really strong. Same like with the pill I was talking about, the
contraception.
Yeah, contraception. And those dosages and so were extra strong, and so I always used to automatically, I get a tonsillitis, I take antibiotics. Now while we were living in that farmhouse, I got another tonsillitis. I was 19 years old at the time, I remember, and I did decide I am not going to take anything this time. And trust me, I was suffering. It was hurting like hell, and it took about 10 days to get over it. I was sick like dog. But I went through it, and I finally healed up, and believe you me, since that time, I never had another tonsillitis. That was it. And I mean, I'm talking what, I'm 67 now. I would get once in a while a little bit like you're scratching in the throat, and I feel it a bit, but I never got another tonsillitis. And that is what made me understand that your body has to build up antibodies on its own, basically, because antibiotics don't really help to build up antibodies. And that might be the solution for at least some sicknesses. And I kind of later on, when my children got sick, kind of converted it to them. I said, okay, fine, you are not deadly sick, let's try it this way. Let's build your antibodies. And don't it kind of worked out to a degree for all of you. Not right now for her. She has tonsillitis. But it really gave me a good idea about how bodies might work. So one last story about that time too. We had a party with friends in Bielefeld in the town, and that was about 20 kilometers from where we lived. And everybody got happy and drunk and high and this and that. And then we were driving home about like 2 o'clock in the morning. And it was winter. It was snowy. It was icy on the road. And they designated me as driver because I was the most sober of all. And then we were in the car with 4 people. And then while we drove on our little country road, I mean way up from everything, the car started to slide and ended up on the side bank. And I couldn't come out right away again. So we would have had to push it or find somebody to tow us out. So we were just getting ready to come out of the car and see how we reach home. When, and 1 or 2 cars passed us while we were standing there and considering what to do. And actually when we first slid into this ditch there, all we found that so funny. We were cracking up laughing. I mean, everybody was laughing loud, and we had like, yeah, look what happened, So 1 or 2 cars passed us, but one of them stopped and asked if we were alright, and we said, yeah, we are fine. It's just like, well, we have to see how we get the car out, and stuff like that. So nothing wrong with us. When we were still considering, suddenly a police car came, stopped right beside us and said, oh, okay, we got a call that people landed in the ditch and were screaming. And we said, screaming? No, we were merely laughing. Anyhow, they saw that we all were kind of intoxicated, so me seeing that I was a driver, they tested me. And in Germany at the time, you are allowed to have 0.8 promille in your blood. And it turned out they had this blowing thing, and it turned out I had 1.3. Ta-da! So they left the other people with the car, took me in the police car back to the town, to the police station. And then I had to do some tests like walk a line and do this and that, like what they do when you're supposedly drunk. And then they took blood from me, made a blood test. And well, as it turned out, I was way too high. But after all this testing, they brought me back to the car. By that time, they had gotten it out with pushing and, the other three people. And they knew that all of we were intoxicated, and they looked upon Thierry and said, okay, you can go on and drive home now. And I said, what? You take away my driver's license and he is more drunk than me and he can drive home now? But it ended really with this thing, they took away my driver's license for 1 year. So that was bad for me because where we lived at that point in time was way far, as I was telling you. And then now to reach, I had to go to school every day. I had to reach in the town every day and come back. So, and buses were not that frequent. So that gave me a hard time. I was always dependent on the other people to, when they went or left, or we had a car, but Thierry had to go to work as well, And I couldn't drive anymore. I used to bring him to work, take the car and go on to school. Not anymore for 1 whole year. Anyhow, that was a bad situation, and all that happened in that time in the farmhouse. But then, as I was saying, we did not really get along after a while with those people and started to look around for another place and finally found a house. And what happened then, I will tell you in the next German story time.
Alright guys, so now see mommy unruly friendship bond, you hear?
So.
Anyways, this is it for today's story time. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe, guys, and we will see you in our next video. Bye.